Hello, my name is Sonia Plascencia, and I will be sharing information on school resource officers. According to the National Association of School Resource Officers, a school resource officer, SRO, is a carefully selected, specifically trained, and properly equipped law enforcement officer with sworn authority, trained in school-based law enforcement and crisis response, and assigned by an employing law enforcement agency to work collaboratively with one or more schools using community-oriented policing concepts. NASRO outlines the roles of a school resource officer, which includes addressing crime, disorder, gangs, and drugs in or around a school, expanding or developing crime prevention efforts, and training students in restorative justice and conflict resolutions. A complete guide for SROs is available and is linked to the resource page at the end of the presentation. One of the guidelines in the handbook includes a section titled Specialized Training. Under this section, guidelines are provided for the roles of an SRO and their responsibilities within a school building. It also includes consideration that at times, mental health professionals may also need to be involved in a situation along with an SRO. Also, SROs should be provided with training in constitutional and civil rights. Additionally, SROs must take in consideration that students with disabilities may need modifications and provide those modifications when they interact with students with disabilities. SROs should also consider the language and cultural barriers or differences that may be present when interacting with English language learners. A plan should be in place for an SRO to have an interpreter and know who that person will be if needed. This will prevent miscommunications and misinterpretation of information. Here's an example of an SRO daily routine in a high school, explained directly from an SRO in Carmel, Indiana. A case involving SROs is LG versus Columbia Public Schools. In May 2019, in Columbia, Missouri, a high school student named LG, who was a straight-A student, was escorted from her classroom to an office by an SRO named Edwards. In the office, police officers were waiting to interrogate LG. Police believed LG had information on an off-campus crime involving a sexual assault of another student. SRO Edwards walked LG over and did not stay for the questioning. During the interrogation that lasted between 10 to 20 minutes, LG, who had a history of anxiety disorder, became upset. LG's family sued the SRO, the city, the police officers, the school district, and the school principal. The federal district judge ruled against Edwards, but Edwards appealed to the Eighth Circuit Court. The Eighth Circuit Court decided the following. Even though students have some Fourth Amendment protection, an officer in Edwards' situation would not know without more guidance whether her escorting LG to a room with other officers and closing a door constitutes a seizure, the court said. The answers to Fourth Amendment questions in cases like these are not so obvious as to put an officer in Edwards' situation on notice that her actions will violate LG's constitutional rights. Additionally, the May 2020 ruling does not ban Columbia police from questioning students in a school. Another case involving an SRO is Richmond versus Varia. Varia and SRO used excessive force on student Richmond, who did not pose a threat to the officer and did not avoid the officer's commands. Without posing harm, Varia slammed Richmond to the ground. A lower court initially dismissed the case and said Varia was protected under qualified immunity. However, the 11th Circuit Court denied the immunity and said the SRO used force without a reason to justify it and violated Richmond's Fourth Amendment. Another case involving an assistant principal and not directly an SRO but does bring up good questions if it wasn't SRO, um, not the assistant principal, was New Jersey versus TLO in 1985. A high school student identified as TLO was suspected of smoking in a bathroom. The assistant principal of the school searched the student's purse and found smoking paraphernalia. The student argued her Fourth Amendment had been violated. However, the Supreme Court ruled that if a reasonable cause is present, then state officials can search a student's belongings. This case connects to SROs because questions can arise if and when an SRO is involved in a case such as New Jersey versus TLO. Are SROs also school officials? The U.S. Department of Education responds to the question if SROs are automatically considered school officials. The answer is no, not automatically. SROs may be considered school officials with legitimate educational interests. However, due to the Family Educational Rights and Privacy Act, which protects students' records, there are limits to what information SROs have access to. So consideration must be taken when SROs are present and how much information they have access to. In addition, there needs to be clear roles on how an SRO is viewed in a school building as a school official or a police officer. To help train and clarify roles, there are trainings for school resource officers. Illinois has a page dedicated to trainings for school resource officers. More locally, here's an example of the Chicago Police Department roles and Chicago Public Schools SRO 2019 draft. Some of the roles stated include providing for the safety and security of CPS students, employees, guests, and property, participating in comprehensive and cooperative problem-solving processes, and responding to crimes and calls for service within Chicago Public Schools. Now we'll take a look at some local district decisions on SROs. In this video from 2020, we hear current CEO at the time, Dr. Janice Jackson, make her anticipated remarks for the Board of Education meeting scheduled in a few days. The Board of Education was going to vote on continuing to allow SROs in Chicago Public Schools. So continuing with the example of district decisions locally for SROs, in the Board of Education meeting on June 24th, 2020, Dr. Janice Jackson included more detailed remarks regarding SROs in CPS schools. Dr. Jackson emphasized that schools and local school councils should have the right to decide to include SROs or not at their school. Her argument begins at minute 29 in the linked video. At the time mark of 2 hours and 36 minutes, Dean Chow, the Chief of Safety and Security, begins a presentation on SROs, which includes data from surveys. Ms. Chow provides information on the improvements in the SRO program, the clear transparency of selection of candidates, including updated roles and responsibilities. Students, teachers, administrators, LSC members, and community members provided input to surveys. Ms. Chow also stated there had been a decline of police notifications from high schools from school year 2015 to school year 2020. Ms. Chow added the next steps in the plan would be to support LSCs in decision making, provide guidance for schools to collaborate with SROs, and begin conversations about safety, whether with or without SROs in the future. At hour 4 and 30 minutes, board member Elizabeth Todd Braley begins by reading into the record and then providing her opinion and remarks. Other members also share their opinion. Mr. Valle, the president of the Board of Education at that time, shares his personal views and insight detailing his experiences as a CPS student. When voting concludes, 3 members say yes to ending the intergovernmental agreement between CPS and the City of Chicago, and 4 noes. This resulted in a vote that allowed SROs to remain in CPS schools with the authority of the school and the LSC to individually vote. However, that changed in 2024 when all SROs in CPS were voted to be removed. In this video, news breaks when CPS eliminates SROs and shifts to an individualized safety plan for schools based on results from its Safety, Culture, and Climate survey. Schools will still have security offers, but SROs will not be in the building. So it's now your turn to decide how would you vote. Think of the following scenario for your discussion question. You are the principal at ABC School. On Tuesday's local school council agenda, a vote must be taken to keep or remove SROs at your school. The district has decided to allow LLCs to make decisions at the school level regarding the presence of SROs in the school building. A total of 7 members are voting. 3 members have said yes to keep SROs in the building. 3 have said no. You are the last member to vote. You may not abstain from voting. What will your vote be? In your response, provide a reason to support your vote. The following are resources that can help to guide you in additional information on SROs. Thank you.